Good day. We're going to discuss about Module 4, Section 2. It is the Rizal's annotation of Morgan. We know that Rizal always seeks for the truth. His love for the country gives him the desire to know exactly the condition of the Philippines when the Spaniard colonized the land of the Philippines. The theory of Rizal was that the Philippines already had an established community, way of life, and society, and was not as backwards and inferior as the Spanish claims. On the contrary, Rizal was resolved that the arrival of the Spaniards contributed to the decline of the rich pre-colonial Filipino society and culture. Journey of Rizal in London. At 37 Chalcot Crescent, Primrose Hill, Camden Town, Greater London, he stayed with the Beckett family as a boarder. He stayed there between 1889 to 1890 to spend several months improving his English language, his mastery of English language. Thanks to Reinhold Rost, director of the India Office Library, he made a letter to the British Museum for Rizal to have a reader's pass. This is where he stumbled upon Antonio de Morga's Sucesos de Islas Filipinas.
His name is Antonio de Morga Sanchez Garay. He was a Spanish soldier, lawyer, and even a high-ranking colonial official for 43 years. The value of his book, Sucesos de las Islas, has long been recognized after his death. It was actually his first-hand account about the early Spanish colonial venture into Asia. He was able to publicize it when he arrived back in Mexico in 1609. The book was based on his personal experiences and his being part of it. He knows about, and even included in his book, was the accounts of the men that went on the expedition with Legazpi. Him being a lawyer, gathering evidences and references for the book was an easy task. The success is the work of an honest observer. Himself, a major actor in the drama of his time, a versatile bureaucrat who knew the workings of the administration from the inside. It is also the first history of the Spanish Philippines to be written by a layman, as opposed to the religious chroniclers. Filipinos have found it a useful account of the state of their native culture upon the coming of the conquistadors. Spanish have regarded it as a work to admire or condemn, according to their views and the context of their time. Some other Europeans, such as Stanley, found it full of lessons and examples. The writing of the book was for the purpose so he could chronicle the deeds achieved by his Spaniards. Him, the discovery, conquest, and conversion of the Filipinas Islands, as well as the fortunes that they from time to time in the Great Kingdom and among the pagan peoples surrounding the island. The contents of the book was, from chapter 1 was the Magellan and Legazpi Seminole Expedition. Chapter 2 to 7 would be the chronological report on government administration under the Governor General. Chapter 8 would finally be the Philippine Island, the natives there, their antiquity, customs, and government. Rizal had worked on Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas as he was a seeker of truth and was labeled as a historian. He wanted to know the Philippines before the Spaniards have taken over. Rizal theorized that the Philippines was self-sufficient, prosperous, and that the Filipinos was a lively community. Rizal believed that the conquest of the Spaniards was a part of the decline of culture and tradition in the country. Rizal's friendship with Blumentritt gave the inspiration in taking up Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, and he did his research and writing for 4 months, but a year to get it published in Paris in January 1890. Rizal found Morga's Sucesos in the British Museum in London. He hand-copied the whole book and annotated every chapter. Rizal created extensive annotations that are no less than 639 items, or 2 annotations for every page. As he also annotated the typographical errors, Rizal commented on each statement that pertains to Filipino practices as sampled on page 248. When Morga describes what bagoong is, stating that it is decomposed fish, with Rizal implying that those who do not know certain foods are most likely to dislike it, and in this case, bagoong is meant to be rotten. Rizal has also appraised past events due to the conditions of the present, thereby committing an error as a historian. Rizal also attacked the church by stating that the friars are abusive and that the idea should not equate that Catholicism is bad. A preface was written by Blumentritt to make some points that the Spaniards should correct their perception that Filipinos are of limited knowledge, that the Spanish had 3 delusions of the Philippines, with Filipinos being an inferior race, that they were not ready for reforms, and that the denial of their equal rights can be compensated by strict justice. In the prologue, Blumentritt wrote in Spanish instead of German. He praised Rizal's work as scholarly and well thought out. He also noted that the Morga's successors was very rare, that only few libraries have it. He also criticized Rizal's work based on his appraisal of the past and his denunciation of Catholicism. Rizal has explained that the purpose of the annotation in his dedication, stating that the purpose of the book was to give awareness of the past that was erased and changed, to allow people to discover the truth of their past and to continue studying to the future. The three arguments in the new edition of the successors have stated that the Philippines had their own culture even before the Spaniards came, that the Filipinos were demoralized and exploited by the colonization, and that the present state of the country is not better than the past state. In Rizal's historical essay, he narrated that the colonial history of the Philippines, emphasizing the incidences of agony, tension, tragedy, and long periods of suffering. With Philippines as a colony of Spain, the country was depopulated, impoverished, and retarded. With no confidence in her past, with no faith in her present, and with no hope in the future. He continued, as the Filipinos lost traditions and mementos of the past, they have given up on writing, songs, poems, laws to learn doctrines that they don't understand. Among others are morality and aesthetics that are just different from their climate and thinking. The Filipinos declined, degraded, they were ashamed to become themselves, and they have learned to appraise what was foreign and incomprehensible. Their spirit was damaged, and Rizal's annotation of his successors appeared the Philippines 68 years later, as the publisher wanted to contribute to honor Rizal. The present work is the sixth volume of the series of writing of Jose Rizal.
When Rizal was still a child, his uncle Jose Alberto told him about an ancient history of the Philippines written by a Spaniard named Antonio de Morga. The knowledge of the book came from an English governor of Hong Kong named Sir John Browning, who once paid a visit to Jose Rizal's uncle. When Jose Rizal was in London, he immediately acquainted himself at the British Museum, where a few remaining copies of the said book was being preserved. Jose Rizal had the book republished with annotations that shows how the Philippines was already civilized even before the Spanish colonization. One of the early biographers of Jose Rizal, Austin Craig, translated into English some important annotations. Governor Morga is the first to write and also the first to publish a Philippine history. This has regard to the concise and concrete form in which the authors treated the matter. There was also another person who was able to write information about the Philippines when the Spaniards came to the country, known as Father Chirino. His work was printed in Rome in year 1604. It is said that his work was rather a chronicle of the missions than a history of the Philippines, though it still contains great deal of valuable material on usages and customs. There was even a worthy Jesuit that admitted that he abandoned writing a political history about the Philippines because Morga had already done so. So some of the examples of Rizal's annotations are: by the Christian religion, Dr. Morga appears to mean that Roman Catholic which by fire and sword he would preserve in its purity in the Philippines. Nevertheless, in other lands, notably in Flanders, these means were ineffective to keep the church unchanged or to maintain its supremacy or even to hold its subject. Another one is Morga shows that the ancient Filipinos already had some army and navy with artillery and other implements of warfare. Their prized crises and campillans for their magnificent temper are worthy of admiration, and some of them are richly damascened. Their coats of mail and helmets, of which there are specimens in various European museums, attest their great advancement in this industry. Last is Filipino had minstrels who had memorized songs telling their genealogies and of the deeds ascribed of their deities. These were chanted on voyages in cadence with the rowing or at festivals or funerals or whenever there happened to be any considerable gatherings. It is regrettable that these chants have not been preserved, as from them it would have been possible to learn much of the Filipinos' past and possibly the history of neighboring islands. Before we end the discussion, we would also like to tell about some of the excerpts from Rizal's annotation to inspire young Filipinos today. To the Filipinos, in my Noli Me Tangere, I commenced to sketch the present conditions obtaining in our country. The effort produced by my efforts gave me to understand before proceeding to develop before your eyes other successive scenes that is necessary to first lay bare the past in order the better to judge the present and to survey the road trodden during 3 centuries. Another is, like almost all of you, I was born and brought up in ignorance of our country's past, and so, without knowledge or authority to speak of what I neither saw nor have studied, I deem it necessary to quote the testimony of an illustrious Spaniard who in the beginning of the new era controlled the destinies of the Philippines and had personal knowledge of our ancient nationality in its last days. Lastly, it is then the shade of our ancestors' civilization which the author will call before you, if the work serves to awaken in you a consciousness of our past and to blot from your memory or to rectify what has been falsified or its calumny, then I shall not have labored in vain. With this preparation, slight though it may be, we can all pass the study to the future.